Aaron Montgomery Ward was born on February 17, 1843 or 44 in Chatham, New Jersey. Ward was a hard worker from a young age, needing to help support his large family. After age 14, he left school and worked numerous jobs, including making barrels, which made him 25 cents a day, to working at a kiln stacking bricks, making 30 cents a day, to even a shoemaker. At the age of 15 in 1859, Ward got a job in a general store in St. Joseph, Michigan, working as a salesman. Making $6 a month in salary as well as board, he was later promoted to manager after 3 years. Traveling to rural farms in the Midwest, he noticed the inability for farms and ranchers to have access to equipment and merchandise they needed. At the end of his tenure, he made $100 a month plus board. In 1865 or 66, Ward had come to Chicago, Illinois, and worked at first for Case & Sabin, a lamp house, as a traveling salesman. He then later joined Field, Palmer & Later. This general store would later become Marshall Field & Company. 2 years after working with them, he left to work for Wills, Gregg & Company, traveling by train to areas as a salesman. With travel being such a painstaking task, he came up with a mail-order catalog idea. Eliminating retail intermediaries, Montgomery Ward planned to purchase merchandise in wholesale and sell them to farmers in rural areas by train. These farmers wouldn't have as much capabilities of shopping as other people did in larger towns and cities. All they had to choose from was overpriced and low-quality products at local general stores. With $1,600 to $2,400, Ward and 2 other business acquaintances began his company, Montgomery Ward & Company. In 1872, originally planned to begin operations in 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed their inventory. The following year, business began. In order to reach the farmers, going farm to farm was impossible, so he introduced a mail-order catalog, the world's first mail-order catalog. Farmers can purchase goods and pick them up at the nearest railroad station. The following year, his 2 partners left due to the lack of sales and low hope, and his soon-to-be brother-in-law, George Robinson Thorne, paid $500 to buy into the company. In 1875, Montgomery Ward issued an unheard-of at the time money-back guarantee on all their products in the catalog. Orders quickly came in from farmers, including members of the Patrons of Husbandry, a Midwestern Farms Association. Country stores, the main supplier to most farmers in the country at this time, would gather Montgomery Ward catalogs and burn them, since this new business was a threat to their future. From 1-page catalog in 1872 to 32 pages the following year, by 1876 the catalog now listed around 3,000 items within 152 pages. In 1897, the catalog had reached an extraordinary 1,000 pages. In 1904, their catalog weighed nearly 4 pounds. One of their best earlier sellers was the sewing machine. Enjoying large sales in an untouched market, a competitor stepped in by 1893, Sears, Roebuck & Company. Sears came out with their own catalog in 1886, and after a decade, they quickly outgrew Montgomery Ward, whereas Ward was never able to regain the mail-order catalog market. Other competitors besides Sears were Jordan Marsh & Company, Wanamaker, amongst others. By early 1900s, Sears had officially passed Montgomery Ward. In that same year, sales were $8.7 million for Montgomery Ward compared to $10 million for Sears. Montgomery Ward began competing with Sears by saying that even though their prices were higher than their rival, the quality of the merchandise was much better. In 1916, to gain the Spanish-speaking customers, Montgomery Ward came out with a Spanish catalog. In 1908, Montgomery Ward opened a 1.25 million square foot building along the Chicago River that stretched almost 1/4 mile. This building, known as the Montgomery Ward & Company Catalog House, was their headquarters until 1974. The building became a national landmark in 1978. Aaron Montgomery Ward died on December 7, 1913, in Highland Park, Illinois. After his passing, a majority of the company was sold to James Duke, George Whelan, and J.P. Morgan, while George Thorne's sons continued to run the company. William Thorne was president until he died in 1917, which was then passed to Robert Thorne, who retired due to illness in 1920. George Thorne passed away in 1918. In 1920, Montgomery Ward lost $10 million, and Whelan and Duke sold their stake to J.P. Morgan. With the inability to unload merchandise from their warehouses, Montgomery Ward got their first taste of retail stores when they opened up temporary retail outlets in big cities to help sell their overhead. It wasn't until 1926 that Montgomery Ward opened their first actual retail store located in Plymouth, Indiana. Just 4 years later, in 1930 to 31, there were nearly 550 Montgomery Ward locations within the United States, with sales in the store highly exceeding catalog sales. The first Montgomery Ward stores opened up in smaller towns, with populations ranging from 10,000 to 15,000 people. The increase of automobiles throughout the nation let people travel further, which hurt catalog sales. Sears, Roebuck & Company proposed a merger with Montgomery Ward in 1930, but they declined. With sales lacking by the early 1930s, J.P. Morgan & Company helped save the company by hiring away Sewell Avery from the United States Gypsum. Avery was able to get goods from manufacturers that were struggling cheaper than their previous manufacturers. These new manufacturers allowed them to sell products cheaper than Sears for the first time. They hired better employees and fired those lacking in sales, as well as closed nearly 150 stores that were not performing. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, through the National Industrial Recovery Act from the effects of the Great Depression, would have allowed retailers such as Montgomery Ward to increase prices, but both Montgomery Ward and Sears declined to cooperate and kept their prices on merchandise low. By 1933, Montgomery Ward finally saw profits again and made nearly $3 million in store sales, but lost over $600,000 in catalog sales. With increasing telephone operation, Ward started telephone orders in 1934. In 1939, Montgomery Ward released a booklet written by an in-house copywriter named Robert L. May that featured a story about a red-nosed reindeer named Rudolph. This story was included in the catalogs that year. During World War II, after the United States entered into the war, President Franklin D. Roosevelt needed to make sure that companies were able to supply the military and civilians in the country with items that were necessary. In regards to having enough supply, Roosevelt created the National War Labor Board in 1942 to help prevent strikes in companies that supplied America with goods to help prevent damaging the war effort. During the war, Montgomery Ward supplied numerous items to help in the war effort, including clothing, automobile parts, and much more. During this time, Sewell Avery worried that after the war, demand would be down, whereas he didn't want to meet union demands and worries that the company wouldn't be making as much money when the war was over. Avery did not want to give employees insurance or pension plans due to the fear of sales declining post-war. By refusing to comply with the union and their demands, went against the War Labor Board. The Labor Board met with Avery, and Avery refused to comply. Avery did not agree with the National War Labor Board and did not comply with the bargaining agreements within the United Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union during 1930, 43, and 44. The Central Chicago Warehouse, the union representation, did not have a deal accepted by Avery unless the President of the United States ordered Avery to comply. Roosevelt ordered Avery to comply, but Avery fell back on his word and did not accept. The following year, with a new contract in hand, Avery did not agree to the Chicago Warehouse Union. The union went on strike on April 12, 1944, and Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9438, which ordered the Secretary of Commerce to seize Montgomery Ward's Chicago headquarters and facilities, and for the Secretary of Commerce to take on operation. In fighting in court, the government argued that one of Montgomery Ward's divisions produced components used in military aircrafts, as well as other goods for, quote, the maintenance of the war economy, end quote. The same month, Attorney General Francis Biddle was sent to Chicago to attempt to talk sense into Avery, but it was to no success. April 26th, Secretary of Commerce Wayne Chatfield Taylor and a Justice Department attorney went to talk with Avery at Montgomery Ward's office in Chicago. Shortly afterwards, a U.S. Marshal alongside 8 deputies and nearly 50 soldiers joined them to seize the Chicago facilities. After an unsuccessful meeting, the following day, going into Avery's office, Avery refused to move, so Biddle ordered the National Guard soldiers to remove him physically while seated on his chair, out of the office and down the street. The smug look on his face with his arms crossed while sitting in the chair showed Avery's stubbornness. By May 9, 1944, the Union completed its election while employees returned to work, which Montgomery Ward was then given back to private management. Avery, though, rejected the new contract set by the union, and workers went on strike and walked out yet again. Roosevelt said the government would, quote, not tolerate any interference with war production in this critical hour, end quote. The United States Department of Commerce ran the company while the seizure went to courts due to the legality of Roosevelt's actions. Section 7 of the Ward Labor Dispute Act of 1943, quote, led to the substantial interference with the war effort, end quote, was used in an excuse to seize the company. Montgomery Ward fought back that the business was not war-related since they did not provide ammunition, weaponry, and so forth, though Section 3 authorized the acting president to take immediate possession of any plant facility equipped for the manufacture or production of any articles or materials that may be required for the war effort. By the end of the same year, tired of Avery's unwillingness to help support the United States government, on December 27th, Roosevelt ordered Henry Stimson, Secretary of War, to seize the rest of Montgomery Ward's plants and warehouses in New York, California, Illinois, Michigan, Colorado, and Oregon. Roosevelt said, quote, strikes in wartime cannot be condoned, whether they are strikes by workers against their employers or strikes by employers against their government, end quote. The seizure was unpopular and not condoned by most Americans, as it was seen the government was abusing their power of the beloved company. After the December seizure, the district court ruled against the government, but most U.S. Court of Appeals reversed the decisions since Montgomery Ward was producing goods for wartime. One day before the government filed a response at a Supreme Court hearing, Montgomery Ward was handed back over to private management by then United States President Harry Truman on October 18, 1945 at 11:59 p.m. Sewell Avery resigned as president in 1954. During 1961 and 1962, and after former Whirlpool Corporation president Robert Brooker came in to run the company, Montgomery Ward started using the Sears model and moved locations to growing metropolitan areas, but struggled to open many due to high startup prices. Through the 1960s, though, sales had finally increased and things were looking up for the company for the first time in decades. Brooker decreased suppliers to nearly half to 7,000, and the number of brands they carried dropped drastically. Brooker stepped down to chairman and CEO while Ed Donnell had become president in 1966 and worried about hostile takeovers due to their low sales and profits. Montgomery Ward merged with Container Corporation of America in 1968. In 1974, Mobil Oil Corporation purchased 54% of Marcor, the holding company from the Montgomery Ward and Container Corporation of America merger. After purchasing the majority of voting shares of Marcor, they merged into the new Mobil Corporation. Also in 1974, the Montgomery Ward Auto Club began. They began selling advertising space in the catalog in 1976. 1973, Montgomery Ward purchased the small discount store chain Jefferson Stores out of Miami. These locations were renamed Jefferson Ward. The company had planned to convert around one-third of the Montgomery Ward stores into Jefferson Ward models. Inexperienced and overwhelming job to convert the old stores was too much for the Jefferson Ward staff, and Jefferson's 18 Northern Division stores were sold to Bradley's in 1985. The remaining Jefferson Ward stores were closed. By the end of 1980, after Mobil had lent Montgomery Ward money numerous times totaling $450 million to $500 million, Montgomery Ward had lost nearly $250,000. Mobil recruited Stephen Pisner, who was successful in B. Dalton and Target, to help turn around Montgomery Ward. Beginning in 1981 until its unveiling in 1984, Pisner showed off his and co-architect Bernard Brennan store within a store concept. Each large store would contain upwards of 7 or so smaller specialty stores. Before the plans took place, he got upset with Mobil and left Montgomery Ward. In January 1985, Montgomery Ward closed 300 catalog stores. At that time, what remained was 322 Montgomery Ward stores, 44 Jefferson stores, the Signature Group, and the catalog. Unfortunately, after 113 years, Montgomery Ward stopped the mail order catalog and began focusing on its retail locations. Mobil was fed up by the mid-1980s and desperate to sell Montgomery Ward. Mobil forgave the nearly $500 million loan to anyone interested in acquiring the company. Brennan returned to the company as president and CEO. He finally unveiled the store-within-a-store concept, and these areas included apparel, home furnishings, electronics and appliances, and automotive goods. He even leased some space in certain stores to a smaller retailer called Toys R Us. In 1988, the Mobil Corporation sold Montgomery Ward to General Electric after failing to become an independent corporation. GE Capital purchased 49% of Montgomery Ward for $3.8 billion to make them a privately held company. Late 80s and into the early 1990s, Montgomery Ward focused on computers and offered a desktop computer for, at the time, a very cheap price of $1,499. This sale was a huge success, and the nation's first computer store department began within Montgomery Ward stores. This Soho department, small office, home office, was ran by Jim Hamilton, who created relationships with computer distributors. He was able to get leading computers into stores for the first time, and was one of the first retailers to carry Apple, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, and numerous others. In the 1990s, sales weren't taking off even though the store-within-a-store concept was slightly working. Montgomery Ward acquired Lechmere Incorporated, a Boston retailer of electronics, housewares, and appliances in 1994 for $113 million in cash and assumption of $91 million of their debt. Trying new concept stores in 1994, Montgomery Ward had opened a new store called Electric Avenue and more that carried electronics, major appliances, as well as furniture. Profits fell around 90% by 1995 and another nearly $250 million loss in 1996. Montgomery Ward remained in downtown and other areas while competitors such as Sears and JCPenney's moved to shopping malls. During the large expansion of Walmart, Target, and Kmart during the 1990s, Montgomery Ward struggled to compete, and in July 1997, Montgomery Ward went into default on their over $1 billion loan and debt and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. GE Capital provided $1 billion in financing to help keep the store stocked. They came out of bankruptcy protection in August 1999. The company closed over 100 stores to hang on and rebranded their stores as Wards. Spending a lot of money remodeling and refreshing the store looks, GE Capital stepped back on their promised financial support of Wards. Unable to keep up with competitors and bringing an updated modern appeal to their stores, in late 2000 they announced that all stores would close, and by 2001 they did. In 2004, Direct Marketing Services Incorporated purchased a lot of Montgomery Ward's intellectual property and trademarks. DMSI themselves were auctioned in 2008 and purchased by Swiss Colony. The new Montgomery Ward website launched in September 2008, and new catalogs were mailed out in early 2009.